Hey everyone, welcome back to Cloud Dev. Today we are going to take a local web API that we have built in Visual Studio and deploy it to Azure. Before we get started, let's quickly go over what a web API is and why it is used. So web API or application programming interface is a set of rules and protocols for building and interacting with software applications. It allows different software systems to communicate with each other over the web. Web APIs are essentially modern software development because they enable different application to share data seamlessly in a way. So in a typical scenario, a user sends a request and gets back a response, often in the form of JSON or XML. This interaction allows the functionalities like retrieving data from the database, performing CRUD operations, and much more. On top of it, web APIs are platform independent, which means client from different devices and platforms can communicate with the same API. This makes them incredibly versatile and crucial component in developing a scalable and maintainable application. To simplify it further, consider the web API as the waiter who takes your order and chef as the database uh, that serves you the food, and that food is the response for the request you made in the form of order. Now, before we proceed with the deployment, let's take a moment to understand what an Azure App Service is and why it is a great choice for hosting web APIs. Azure App Service is a fully managed platform for building and deploying and scaling the web apps. It provides built-in features like auto scaling, load balancing, and integrated securities, which means you can focus on your code without worrying about the underlying infrastructure. One of the key benefits of Azure App Service is auto scaling. So there are two types of auto scaling, vertical scaling and horizontal scaling. In vertical scaling, we increase the size of the instance, and in horizontal scaling, we adjust the number of instances running your application based on the demand, ensuring high availability and performance. Plus, it offers load balancing, so it distributes the traffic evenly across your instances so that no single instance is overwhelmed by the incoming traffic. All the app that runs under app services are governed by a contract with the cloud service provider known as App Service Plan. It includes measured compute resources such as fixed computing power shared by different applications in the same plan, with the cost based on the computing power consumed. Similarly, like other app Azure services, there is pricing involved. So we have pricing tiers for this. So we have free, shared, dedicated, and isolated. So the difference is like more dedicated VMs towards your app service. If you are going with isolated or dedicated, shared is like your computing power is being shared by others, and free is like for testing purposes. There you don't get any scaling power, or mm, there is a limited computing power as well. While deploying, we will see the different pricing tiers. So overall, Azure App Services makes it easy to deploy and manage our web APIs with minimal efforts. Though there are some limitations that I feel is like we don't have any remote desktop connection to the server where our web API is being hosted, and performance counter is also not visible. So now I think now we have a good understanding of what Azure App Service is and how we can use it. So now let's see how we can deploy our web API to Azure. Here's our web API in Visual Studio. It's a simple API that is connected to my Azure database. So it takes a user that has the following properties. I would say user ID, first name, last name, email ID, password. So we are going to pass these values as of in a JSON format or through a Angular application, we can do that, and it will simply store the user in the database. So if you haven't worked with Azure SQL before, you can check out my previous video. So before we can deploy this particular API to Azure, we need to make sure everything is working correctly. So we will try to run it locally and see whether it is up and running. So it's opening in our local browser. So let's wait for it to load. So as you can see, it is working, and we can also test this out, but I have already created an UI to test this out, so we can use that as well. Uh, so let's see the API and test it out using the Swagger. So I'll click on try it out, and I have already created a data. For this, we don't need to give registration date as we will be getting it from the code. We click on execute. So here we are checking whether that user exists. So it does not exist. So we will add the registration date, and we will add that to our context class, and then we will save the changes, and this should work. So we have got this response success. Now we will go to the database and check whether we have inserted the record successfully or not. If you want to know how to use the Azure Data Studio, be sure to check my previous video. And you can see that we have successfully created a record in our table with the help of our API, which is currently hosted locally. So now we will proceed to the next step, that is moving it to Azure. So let's go back to the Visual Studio. So before proceeding here, we need to create app service for our web API where we will be hosting it. So let's go to Azure portal. So this is our Azure portal dashboard. So here we will select app service. We will click on create web app. Then we will select the subscription. For me, it's Visual Studio Professional, and resource group will be Expense Insight, or you can create a new one for yourself. For me, I am using Expense Insight, and the web app name should be unique. So yes, so this API name is available, and this will be appended to the API name. So this is basically DNS. We'll see that in detail in further videos. So we will select like code, and the runtime stack would be .NET 6, and it is Windows, and we can select Central India, and here is the pricing tiers or pricing plans which we can select from. So for this demo, I think free version is more suitable. Then we will go to the next deployment. So here we don't need to do any changes since we are not connecting it with GitHub for continuous deployment. So we'll go to the next. So enable public access. Yes, we want public access. Then next. So do we need application insights? So for this particular demo, I don't think we need to monitor our performance. So I will keep it as no, and then next add tags. Then we can simply review and create. So yes, everything looks fine. SKU is free, 1 GB memory, and we will create. Click on create. So as you can see, the deployment is now in progress. Let's wait for the deployment to complete. So as you can see, the deployment is complete. We'll click on go to the resource. Yes, status is running, app service plan and default domain name. If we click on this, yes, our web app is up and running. So we will now go back to Visual Studio and try to publish our web API to this particular app service. So we will click on expenses site, right click, publish. So it will ask you to create a publish profile. So we will select Azure. Next. So we need Windows. Then we'll click on next. So here it will be showing the app service is running on various resource group. So I only have one. So here we will select this and we'll click on next. And API management, we can skip this step and click on finish. So we are ready to publish. Now let's click on publish. Yes, I want to stop debugging. It is starting to publish. Okay, so we got an error and it says user unauthorized. So let's go back to our Azure portal and see what is the issue that we are facing. Since it's up and running, I think we will go to the deployment center. So currently what we are doing is we are using FTP based deployment. So we will see. So here you can see FTP authentication has been disabled for this web app. So to change that, we will go to configurations, and here we can see the FTP basic authentication, it's off. So we will turn it on and we will save it. Continue. Now we'll go to the deployment center. FTPS credentials. So now we have this FTP username and password here. So let's go and see what is show all settings. Go to connections. So we will to change the publish method to FTP, since we are working with the FTPS credentials. So here we have to provide FTP path. So I'll show you that as well. So we will copy this particular path and paste it, and the username and password as well should be pasted. So username is, we click on validate connection, click on next, click on save, and then we click on publish. Hopefully this time it will publish. So it is asking for password. We will paste it. Okay, as you can see, it is successfully published now. So once we have successfully published our web API, so now we will go to Azure portal. We will copy this default domain name, and like we have an Angular application that takes the following user details and registers the user. So we are going to make small change in our Angular application to connect to this particular uh, web API that is hosted in Azure. So we will remove localhost from here and we will paste our domain name and we'll save it and we will build it. It has started building. Let's wait for it to complete and let's then try to insert a new user to our database. So our Angular application is running now. So we will click on inspect. We'll open the console and keep to see the message that our API is returning currently. That is success if it successfully registers the user. So I will keep it. we'll click on sign up and let's see what response we get. We got a response success. So this must have added our user to the database. Let's see. Let's open Azure Studio. Let's run the query. So as you can see, we have the third record as well inserted into our database. So that means our API is working as expected. That's it. Thank you for watching. Be sure to subscribe to my channel for more such videos.